Can you hear me? Guys, how's the sound?
Sounds okay.
Sounds okay? Okay, good. Baruch Hashem. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yoma Daf Mem. We are dedicating this class in merit of Ido and Mirav Cohen for sponsoring and upgrading all of our Gashmiistic equipment, both for the Chabad.org and for the Zoom and YouTube, and a big Yasher Koyach. However, we are in the middle of the following sugya. There are two steps over here, and we have to stay focused. First, the Gemara on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis brings down a machloikis between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan. We are speaking here about making the goydel to determine which one of the he-goats will go Lashem. As we'll learn soon, it's slaughtered, the blood is brought in the Kodesh Kachim, then the blood is sprinkled on the Paraychas, then the blood is sprinkled on the Mizbeach, and which other he-goat, which was exactly like the first one, is going to be taken to the Azazel. It's called the Seir HaMishtaleach, the dispatched he-goat, as we'll learn all of the pratim of what needs to happen to that soil in the near future. Now, Rabbi Yanai holds that making the lottery, meaning putting the two tablets in the kalpi, drawing up, as let's go with our Mishnah, the Kohen Gadol had to his right a he-goat, he had to his left a he-goat. He stuck both of his hands into this chest and he lifted up, he drawed up both of his hands. The one to the right is going to be to determine what the he-goat to the right is going to go. The left hand determines what the he-goat to the left is going to be designated for. So Rabbi Yanai holds that Aliyah's goydel mitoich kalpi me'akeves, that step is essential. And that's a chiddush because by other karbanos, how do we determine where the carbon should go to? We make a verbal declaration and we make a verbal designation, and that suffices. Here, that will not suffice. However, Rabbi Yanai holds that the then placing the lot on top of the back of the animal, that is something that should be done, but it's not essential. So holds Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yochanan is even more lenient, and Rabbi Yochanan holds that in as much as making the lottery is a mitzvah, but even if you did not draw the lots, even the Aliyah is not MERCAVA. We have to remember that. So Rabbi Yanai holds that at least the Aliyah is MERCAVA. Rabbi Yochanan holds that even the Aliyah is not MERCAVA. That's the machlokes Amoraim. And the Gemara links this argument with the machlokes Tanoim that we will have on Daf Samach. The machlokes is in between Rab Nechemia and Rab Yehuda. They are focusing specifically on the avodas that the Kohen Gadol needs to do, dafka b'big day lavan. Rab Nechemia is of the shita that every step of the sequence of the avodas b'big day lavan is essential. If you change the sequence, it has to be redone. And why is that? Because the Torah uses the word chukah, and chukah is one of the key words that tell you that it has to be the way it's written, including with the sequence, and if not, you did not get the avoid. Rabbi Yehuda is more lenient. He says that the word chukah is only written regarding that which is done inside the Kodesh Kachim, and all the other steps of the avodah, which will include the lottery. Emes, the Kohen Gadol, is already wearing the big day lavan, but he's doing it, as we learned, in the eastern part of the outer courtyard. So that's not going to be ma'akiv. So the Gemara now links the machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yechanan with the machlokes Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Yehuda. And in that, Chevra, we have to review these steps. We had two versions. The first version was of the opinion, I think it's even kedai to read it inside before we start learning. First version, second version, and we're going to spend a whole daf today to see whether we can refute Rabbi Yanai according to the second version, Aliyah de Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll see in a moment. We're going to go through today, the big thing of today is we're going to go through the 10 steps that need to be done with the Big Day Lovin, as we're going to say it now in the Ara Hagdama. And you should know that at the end of the sugya, we will actually prove that according to the Tanach, Rabbi Yehuda, everyone will hold, even Rabbi Yechanan, that doing the Aliyah, that drawing the lots is essential. That's going to be really the maskana of the Gemara, even though in the beginning, as we will chazer, the Gemara's havamina is that the machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yechanan can be even according to Rabbi Yehuda, as we'll speak out in a moment again. Now, I would like to share the 10 steps in the avodah, the 10 steps that we will call this the sequence, the seder of the avodah. Number one, and we're going back to the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Hey Yomid Beis, that the Kohen Gadol, who's already dressed now with Big Day Lovin, is going to say vidui over his bull, over the pot. He says that vidui when the pot is standing bein ulam lamizbeach. That's going to be step number one. Step number two is what we learned yesterday on Daf Lamed Tes. And I want to stand corrected. He doesn't shech the pot yet. He only said the vidui. And let's call this now the first confession, because as we'll see in a moment, there is a second confession that's made on top of the same bull with an addition. So first you have vidui number one over the pot. Step number two is Daf Lamed Tes. The Kohen Gadol goes and he does the lottery. All right, he's going to draw the lots and he's going to determine which seir, which he goes Lashem and which he goes La Azazel. And we are looking for the good simon that the right hand should pick up Lashem, which will determine that the goat to the right will go Lashem and the left hand, that will be the ideal. And indeed, those were the many miracles from one of the many miracles that happened in the times of Shimon HaTzadik. Step number three is that the Kohen Gadol doesn't shecht anything yet. He goes back to the bull and he says a second vidui. First vidui was focusing on his failings, and here he's going to expand the vidui, but it's going to be what we will call the second vidui. And then he's going to shech the bull. Now, when he shechts the bull, and he is the same one that's going to receive the dam, someone else is going to have to hold a cup of blood for him. Because step number four, and we're going to learn that on Daf Mem Gimel Lamed Beis, it's now after the shechita of the par, before the avodah of the blood of the par, the Kohen Gadol is going to take the ladle and going to take the shovel, and he's going to go into the Kodesh Kachim, and he's going to offer the ketores, leaving the ladle and the shovel on the floor after he finishes the avodah of the ketores. The Kohen Gadol then goes out and he gets the blood of the par, and he brings it into the Holy of Holies. That's step number 5. And he's going to sprinkle it towards the kapoides, towards the ark cover, with many details, some of which we are familiar because we say it in the davening of Musaf, but we're going to go through every step in Mishnah Gemara. Step number 6 is that only after he finishes the dam avodah of the bull does he then go back out into the azora and shech the he-goat that was designated Lashem. Step number 7 is that he takes the dam of the soid and he goes back inside the Kodesh Kachim. And here again, he's going to sprinkle the blood in front of the ark cover. Step number 8 is that he goes into the Heichal now and he goes back to the dam of the bull and he sprinkles it in front of the Paroiches. Right, the Achas Lamayla V'Sheva Lamata. As we'll learn again, we'll learn all the steps, the details later. Step number 9 is that he takes the blood of the soid and he sprinkles it towards the curtain. And then the 10th step, and there are many details in the 10th step, there's a machlokes about it, is that at some point he's going to mix the blood now of the dam hapar and the dam hasoir. Let's go with this version. And after they're mixed, he's going to sprinkle it both on the 4 corners of the inner altar and on the tiharoi and on the cleared out top of the inner altar. That's going to be step number 10. Now, we're going to review these steps many times, but this is the beginning of the Seder that we have on Daf Mem, and all of this is connected now to our machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yechanan, Bishitas, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Nechemia. And now the final intro has to be to review. We left off on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis 2 lines before the bottom. But I'm going to go by heart quickly. The Gemara began saying the version number 1 was that according to the Shita that holds that anything that was done with the white garments but outside the Holy of Holies is not essential. And that is the Shita of Rebbe Yehuda. Everyone will agree that the lottery is not essential. Rabbi Yanai would not say that the drawing is essential. The only argument is only according to Rab Nechemia, as we learned yesterday. The second version holds, the Ikeda Amri holds, that according to Rabbi Nechemia, that says that any sequence step, any step of the sequence that's done with the white garments is essential, then everyone will hold that obviously the drawing of the lots will be essential, according to Rabbi Nechemia. Their argument is only according to Rabbi Yehuda. That even though Rabbi Yehuda is more lenient, Rabbi Yehuda holds that what sequence is essential, only that which is done in the Holy of Holies. Nevertheless, Rabbi Yanai will hold that Rabbi Yehuda makes an exception when it comes to drawing of the lottery. Because as we will learn on Daf Samach, what are they arguing about? Why would something be essential or not? So one of the key words that determines essentiality is chukah. Chukah doesn't only mean that it's a supra-rational law. Chukah means that it must be done the way God writes, including with the sequence. Chukah is not written by the avodas that's not inside the Holy of Holies. But there's another rule by Kachim, that shana b'hakasav la'akev, that anything that the Torah repeats twice, the reason why God repeats it twice is to tell you that this is essential. And regarding the drawing of the lots, the Torah says twice, asher Allah, Allah meaning drawing up, taking it out of the chest. So that's taken now. The Torah doesn't say twice to place it, which is why even Rabbi Yanai holds that the hanocha is not ma'akev, but at least the Aliyah will be ma'akev. This is where we're up to. 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid. The Gemara now is going to ask a question. According to the second version, even Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's essential, which is Shitas Rabbi Yanai. We're going to challenge Rabbi Yanai according to the second version of their machlokes.
Amen. Rabbi, quick question.
Yes.
Does chukah always carry that second implication?
By Kachim, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, one more premise, and we spoke it out yesterday, is that we are taking it as a given now, and that will change in Daf Mem, that if the sequence is not essential, it must mean because the whole avoid is not essential. We're putting them mamish on the same track. The machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia was never about completely skipping something. They were speaking about what happens if in the 10 steps that we just spoke out, something went out of sequence. But logically, it's psychological. If we don't care about the sequence, you know why? Because you can skip it altogether. That's why we don't care if you went out of sequence. Okay, so Meisveit says in a Braisa, listen to the words, mitzvah lahagril. Lahagril l'choyre means to draw the lots. It's a mitzvah. However, like many times, sometimes mitzvah means it's essential. But the Braisa explicitly says, Ve'im loy higril kasher. So there is a Tana that clearly is saying that you don't have to draw the lots. Now we got a problem. According to the first version of the machlokes Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yechanan, Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda, Kula Alma loy pligi, the loy ma'akva, which is what we said is good. So our Braisa is going to follow the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. However, Daf Mem, and the kasha is on the second version on top of the Amid, the Amrat, that they do argue. In other words, that Rabbi Yanai holds, that even Rabbi Yehuda holds, that making the drawing of the lot is ma'akev. So according to Rabbi Yechanan, here again, don't forget, according to Rabbi Yechanan, according to Rabbi Nechemia, it is ma'akev. Doesn't matter. Rabbi Yechanan will hold that this Tana is authored by Rabbi Yehuda. So Ha Mani, who is the author, it's sicher not Rabbi Nechemia. It can only be Rabbi Yehuda. Problem is that according to Rabbi Yanai, that's the second version, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Aliyah, the drawing is ma'akev. So answers the Gemara today, you have to amend, whether it's changing the words or the understanding, that the Braisa was not speaking about the drawing of the lots, but it's speaking about the placing of the lots. Lehaniach. This is great. Lehaniach is, as we learned, even Rabbi Yanai, who's more machman than Rabbi Yechanan, holds that once you lifted the lots, it's already determined because the he-goats were both to the right and to the left of the Kohen Gadol. So when he lifted up both lots, so we know already the one to the right, whatever is written on the right is for the side on the right. Whatever is in the left hand is for the side of the left hand. That already determined. Now, the fact that the Torah Taka writes you have to place it down, that's a mitzvah. But that is Taka L'Kula Alma, not Ma'akev. We're not done yet. Frag the Gemara, these pictures are not helping. Toshema, we learned in a Braisa mitzvah, Lahagril, that there's a mitzvah to make the lots, Ule his vadois. Now, Chavra, let's remember that we already spoke it out on the intro. There are actually 3 times that the Kohen Gadol says vidui. There are 3 times that he says vidui. He says vidui over the par once. Then after he does the Gadol, he says vidui over the par twice. Then the 3rd time that he does vidui, we didn't say this in the intro. The 3rd time that he says vidui is the vidui that's said over the soil that's hamishtaleach. There is actually no confession said over the soil that's going to be slaughtered. So just to know that this lehisvados is on the soil, the one that's going to be dispatched. Okay. Now, lo yigrel v'lo hisvade, says this braisa, kosher. So here again, same type of kasha. You know, it's going to be easier to say that the author is Rabbi Yehuda. The problem is, according to Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hagrilla is essential. So who's the author of this braisa? And here you cannot give the same answer you gave before. That the braisa that says the words Hagrilla, which generally means the beginning, the drawing of the lot. But no, here it's going to mean only the placing of the lots on the animals. It can be, because then the flow of the braisa mamish will not work. Ema seifa of this braisa, Rab Shimon Oimer. Rab Shimon argues with the Tanakama that says mitzvah lahagril ule hizvadois, but if you did neither of them, it's good. Rab Shimon says lo higril kosher, but lo hizvadem pasul. And now says the Gemara, my lo higril, how will you explain the meaning of hagrala? This is both according to the Tanakama and according to Rab Shimon. If you're gonna to faren for Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, you're gonna say that this braisa means lo hiniach. So let's get something clear over here. So the Tanakama is saying that if you didn't place it, it's kosher. And Rab Shimon is agreeing by saying if you didn't place it, it's kosher. Now, what does that imply? That would imply that Rab Shimon Taka says that the placement is not essential, but the drawing is essential. Bichlal the Rab Shimon Sover that Hagrala is ma'akev. That's a problem. Because Vehotanya, we know from elsewhere that Rab Shimon is the most lenient. Rab Shimon clearly holds that drawing of the lots is completely not ma'akev. Vehotanya, meis echad mehem. Here we're speaking about the 2 he-goats. What happens if one of the he-goats died, and here we're speaking about after the lots were drawn. Now, we will learn today on Amud Beis more details about it. There is a certain point that if one of the he-goats dies, we're good. If the sire that was designated to be dispatched died, everything is fine. But that's after a certain point later. But if right after they made the lottery, one he-goat died. Now, what are the options here? There's 2 options here. One option here is just to replace it. But the problem is that the replacement he-goat never underwent a lottery. So what will be this? What are you going to do? Take 2 he-goats. If you take 2 he-goats and you make a lottery, so one of them will be replacing the one that died. But you will, however the lottery falls, you're going to end up with an extra he-goat, right? And Rab Shimon is trying to avoid that. So in not to have an extra he-goat, says Rab Shimon, maybe chaveroi shaloi b'hagrala divrei Rab Shimon. Now, guys, obviously, if making the lots is essential, Rab Shimon would never be allowed to say that. Clearly, Rab Shimon holds that the hagrala, even the drawing of the lots, are not essential. Now, all of that, you have to appreciate. If the meaning of the braisa of mitzvah lahagril means to draw the lots, then it's perfect. And Rab Shimon is l'shitosai, because he says that lo higril kasher. The problem is only that if you're going to farenfer, who's the Tanakama? Now, the Tanakama is not Rab Shimon. So again, the Tanakama can only be Rabbi Yehuda, which is fine according to Rabbi Yechon and according to the second version. But according to Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, even Rabbi Yehuda is moided that drawing the lots is ma'akev. Who's the author of the braisa? So the Gemara says, you know what? I'm going to still say that the Braisa is speaking about Hanach. We infer from the words of Rab Shimon, if Hagrilla means Hanacha, that when he says Higril is kosher, Hanach is kosher, doesn't that imply that Rab Shimon himself holds that the drawing of the lots are essential, and Rab Shimon doesn't subscribe to that? So the Gemara says, Rab Shimon lo yoda maiko amar rabbanan. And the pshat in the Braisa will be, is that when the Tanach said that mitzvah lahagril, but if lo yigril, v'lo yisfada kosher, Rab Shimon himself did not know what the Tanach meant. And this is what Rab Shimon is telling the Tanach. If when you said Hagrilla means Hagrilla mamish kamritu, means if you yourself are moida, that even the drawing of the lots are not essential. Now we know according to Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, it's not the pshat. But Rab Shimon didn't know what the Tanach meant. Then I'll agree with you. I also, Rab Shimon holds that drawing of the lots is not essential. But Rab Shimon will disagree as far as the vidui is concerned, as we clearly see that Rab Shimon holds that saying confession over the side of Mishtalech is essential. Then Peligna alaychu only b'chada. But if hagrala de ka'amritu, you meant hanacha, which certainly is what it means, according to Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version. So then, not only do I hold that this saying vidui is essential, then peligna alaychu betarte, because I will hold that not only is the hanacha not essential, but I also hold that the hagrala is not essential, and the Tanakama holds that. Right, the Tanakama holds that the Hagrilla, that the drawing of the lots is essential. So either he argues with one or he argues with two. But coming back, the Tanakama meant only that the Hanach is not essential. But the Tanakama is Rabbi Yehuda, who will hold that drawing of the lots is essential. Now, Tashma, weiter another attempted refutation. Here now that we spoke out in the intro, the 10 steps. Now, Nachamal, step number 1 is to say the confession over the bull. Step number 2 is that he draws the lots over the 2 seirim. Step number 3 is that he now says confession number 2 over the bull, and he shechts the bull. Step number 4 is he brings the ketreides into the kodesh kachim. Step number 5 is he takes the bull's blood into the kodesh kachim. Step number 6 is that he slaughters the soid Lashem. Step number 7 is that he brings the blood of the soid inside the kodesh kachim. So guys, halt cup, you'll notice that every step, the par comes before the soid. The confession of the par came before the soid. The shchita of the par is before the shchita of the soid. The sprinkling of the dam hapad inside the Holy of Holies is before the soid. And then, then steps 8 and 9 is that the blood of the par is sprinkled on the paroiches first, also. And then the blood of the soid is sprinkled on top of the paroiches. And then step number 10 is, let's go now that you mixed it all together, and from now on, the par and the soid are all joined together. So says the Braisa, that par ma'akiv es hasoid. That means that if you neglected to do a step with the bull, that's the par. You didn't do the par. You went ahead and you did the step of the he-goat prior to the par. Then what you did with the he-goat does not have any effect. And you're going to have to repeat it in the right sequence. However, what about on the reverse, says the Braisa, that so'ir, which means that if you neglected to do the step of the so'ir that should have been before the par, that will be the problem. What step of the soil comes before the par? But if you neglected that, then ein ma'akev es hapar. Even though you did the avodah of the bull first, the avodah of the bull was just fine. And now the Braisa adds very difficult words. What are we referring to? Zak the Braisa, b'matani shebifnim, that which is offered inside. Guys, inside, l'chura means inside the Holy of Holies. So asks the Gemara, hold on. Let's understand first the case of the Braisa. Bishloima par, the Reisha, Ma'akev Sasoir. Par means the neglect. If you skip the par, then what you did with the soil will be ineffective. What are we referring to? Pashit, like we mentioned. Every step, the ox comes before the he-goat. So the agdeme l'soir, like for example, if you brought the blood of the soil inside the Holy of Holies before mekama par, liyavid v'leklum. and you're going to have to redo it because the par has to come before the soir. But what will be the case of the seif of the Braisa? Elosoir, which means the neglecting to do the higot. And you preempted it with the par. So it's not ma'akiv, b'metzias. You tell me what case of the soir comes before the bull. So ilema the iagdim matono is the par behechel. What happens that if you brought the blood of the par and the hechel, you neglected to bring the pot inside the hechel. The hechel is, as we mentioned, steps 8 and 9. You finish bringing everything in the Holy of Holies. Now when you come into the hechel, the avoid of the pot should have come before the avoid of the soil. But what happens if you bring the matanis of the pot behechel before you brought the matanis, the soil b'kodesh kachim, which is bifnim, which will fit the words of the Brais. Yechap, what happened over here? He did avoid of the pot. He sprinkled it in the Holy of Holies. He was supposed to now go and get the blood of the soil into the Holy of Holies. So the Kohen Gadol said, why am I coming and going back and forth? I already have the dam of the pot in my hand. Let me sprinkle it now with the hechel. And that is a step where taka, the soil should have been before the pot. The soil is always step number 2, but it's step number 2 in that environment. So in the Holy of Holies, pot and soil. Then in the hechel, pot and soil. But if he would now preempt the soil, neglect to do the soil, do the par first, and you're telling me the seifa that it's not ma'akev, that can be. Why can that not be? Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia, whether if skipping the sequence is essential or not, but everyone agrees that that which needs to be done in the Holy of Holies, there the seder, the sequence is essential. So if we are speaking about a step that needs to be done inside the Holy of Holies, which is bringing the blood of the soid in the Holy of Holies, before you take the dam of the par on the pareiches, everyone will hold that it is essential. So this brisa will follow no one. It can't be chukak sidbuhu. Elolav, the agdim matonois, the par bifnim. That what happened is that you brought the blood of the par bifnim. We have to speak about bifnim. That's the words of the brisa. Before you did the hagrilla, which means you skipped l'choira, doing the lottery. And the brisa is saying here again that it's okay. So here again, we're finding a Tana that holds that skipping the lottery is not essential. And again, who's going to be the author? It must be Rabbi Yehuda. But that's a problem according to the second version, according to Rabbi Yanai. I know that the Braisa is not speaking about completely skipping the step. The Braisa is only speaking about going out of sequence, that you brought the dam of the par before you b'chlal made the lottery. That's the premise of this whole sugya. That means that ikara da hagrala nami loy ma'akva. If you're going to say that the sequence is not essential, that's the premise. It means that you can entirely skip the step. So here again, who is the author of this brisa? It certainly cannot be Rabbi Nechemia. It must be Rabbi Yehuda, because the hagrala is done outside. But if there is a version, which there is, the second version is that Rabbi Yanai holds that even Rabbi Yehuda's moida that took the hagrala. Asher Allah, Shona Bar Kosav La'akev is essential. So then who authored the seif of this brisa? So the Gemara says like this, answer Loi, the Agdim, the brisa is speaking about that you skip the sequence by bringing the matones, the par, b'mizbeach, inside the hechel, not in the Holy of Holies, not the hagrala. The Agdim, matones, the part of the mizbeach, you, instead of first putting the dama par on the paroiches, then the dama soil on the paroiches, and then going to the mizbeach, you use the par and you skip the soil. You went the par on the paroiches, then you went to the mizbeach. Mekame maton is a sir behechol, and indeed this brisa will be authored by Rabbi Yehuda, who clearly says that dvaram anasim a big day lovin, but bachutz means outside the Holy of Holies, loy ma'akva. Gemara right away counters that cannot be the case of the Braisa, because the third line of the Braisa, the ending of the Braisa was Bamatonois shebafnim. Bafnim means not inside the hechel. I know sometimes in other areas inside means inside, not the azara, but not in this context. So Ella, the Gemara says, I have a gavaldik answer. We just established that the Tanach Rab Shimon is for sure holds that hagrala is not ma'akev. Clearly. Elamani Rab Shimon, Amar Akva, Amachaya, Takanat Rabbi Yehuda. But it is Rab Shimon. The Iboy Yisema, Lo Oilam, it is Rabbi Yehuda. And the whole premise of the question is going to be challenged. True, Unehi de Besidra Loima Akva. Rabbi Yehuda indeed holds that the sequence of any step that's done outside the Holy of Holies, which will include making the lottery, the sequence is not ma'akev. But yet, according to Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hagrilla itself will be ma'akev. So if you skip the sequence, the Braisa says you didn't yet make the lottery, you're good, as long as you will do it. But doing it is something that needs to happen. And now that we brought down this machloikas before of Reb Shimon, and we're going to completely change topic now. What did we learn before? We learned the machloikas Reb Shimon and the Chachamim, whether saying confession on the soyer hamishtaleyach is ma'akev or not. And Chavah, just to make it clear, when we went through the Seder of the 10 steps, it's not there at all. Because this is not negeya to any of the avodas hadam. Clearly, Rab Shimon and the Chachamim follow their own opinions. The Tanya Daf Mem Amid Beis, it says in a Braisa, and here we are quoting the Psukim in Parshas Achrei Mois regarding the soir that's designated to go la Azazel. So it says that Yoma Chai Lifnei Hashem, that make sure that soir remains standing alive in front of God, which means inside the Azara, lechaper olav, in order to achieve atonement from it. And as Rashi beautifully explains, that the word chai is superfluous. Says Rashi, let's read inside the top of Rashi. Al karchach lelamdenu she'imeis. The whole point of this verse is to tell you is that if this soir, the one that was designated to be dispatched, died, at a certain point, you have to replace it. Now, how do you replace it? Do you have to bring 2 new he-goats and make a new goydel? Or, like Rab Shimon says, you don't need to do that. That detail is not negeya. The point is that if the soir hamishtaleyach is not standing alive, if it died, that has to be replaced. And the question is, at what point? So the Torah says, lechaper olav. So the question is, what's the meaning of the lechaper olav? Here is the machlokes Rab Shimon and the Chachamim back inside the Gemara. This is all part of the Braisa. Admosa yiyeh zokut la'amad chai. And there is a certain point that once we already reach this place, even if it died, we're good. That's going to be, says the Tanach, which is Rabbi Yehuda, ad sha'as matan domoy shel chaveroi. The lechaper olav is not referring to that which is done with the soir hamishtaleyach. The lechaper olav means that the soir hamishtaleyach has to stand alive until the kapara with the dam of the soir hanasa b'fnim was done. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, Rab Shimon says that lechaper olav, and we had this in the beginning of the sugya, that the word kapara sometimes means confession. There was no confession made on the soir that slaughtered Lashem. We learned there are 2 confessions that are made on the dam on the par. The first one, then we made the lottery, then he went back and another vidui on the par, and then he shechted the par. When again the soir, there is a statement of confession, but that's only made on the soir hamishtaleyach. And according to Rab Shimon, that's the meaning of lechaper olav. Now it's gavaldik. You see clearly, achas vidui dvarim. So what did we see? We see that according to Rab Shimon, obviously making confession is essential. If it died before you made the confession, you have to replace it. Rab Shimon doesn't hold you have to bring 2 and make a new lottery, but you have to replace it. According to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you didn't make confession, as long as the soir hamishtaleyach was alive while you brought the dam of the soir Lashem to God, then the soir hamishtaleyach's main function already happened. You see that the minimum of what the soir hamishtaleyach accomplishes, it's accomplished even before you made confession over it. That's the machlokes, whether you have to make confession on the soir hamishtaleyach. Is it essential? Rabbi Yehuda clearly holds that it's not, and Rabbi Shimon holds that it is. Oh, now, but my komifligi, the machlokes is how to touch the word lechaper. Kidatanya, that in this pasuk, by the soir mishtaleach, right? The soir should be stood alive, right? Till lechaper olav. Lechaper olav, according to Rabbi Yehuda, means till the blood of its mate. The blood is the blood of the soir Lashem. That's how he teaches lechaper. Where else do we find in the portion of Yom Kippur that the words lechaper refers to the application of the blood? And by the way, that's consistent with the general rule of kachim, that the main kapara comes through the dam. It says v'chila mechaper es hakodesh. All right. So says the Gemara. This is the general statement in the Gad Avodah of Yom Kippur, that malahalan b'chaparas damim afkan b'chaparas damim. Gewalt. Rab Shimon Omer, no. That the words lechaper olav, this verse is speaking about the soir hamishtalech, and the lechaper olav is speaking about the kapara that comes through the soir hamishtalech. Of course, ideally, you think, the whole purpose of the soir is for it to be dispatched, for it to be thrown off the cliff. That's ideal. But you see clearly that the main moment of kapara is even before it was dispatched. It didn't even leave the temple complex, but yes, the Kohen Gadol said confession over it. Coming all the way back, now we're coming back to our sugya. So far, we did not refute Rabbi Yanai, according to the second version, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Tashuma, let's continue going now. Actually, now we're going to quote a Braisa that will appear that according to all of the Tanoim, the drawing of the lottery is not essential. Soshama, Sho'alu, Talmida Rabbi Akiva, Allah bismoil ma'u sheyachzir liyamin. Connected to the sugya that we learned yesterday, that it was like a siman toiv and it was a miracle. We always wanted for the soir Lashem, for the Lashem Chatas to come up in the right hand. Now, after the passing of Shimon HaTzadik, that didn't always happen. Furthermore, we learned, mamish towards the end of Bayesheni, the last 40 years, it never happened. It's like a reverse miracle. God was showing us that it was in the left hand. Now, when people know that the left hand, and therefore the left goat, was Lashem, they feel, it's a psychological thing. They feel they're rejected by God. So they asked Rabbi Akiva, the Kohen Gadol made the lottery. He made the lottery. He drew the lots. Is he allowed to switch the lot of the right hand in the left hand? So at least the people won't know that it came to the left. Now, one thing is clear, Chevra. If the drawing of the lots is essential, making such a switch for sure should be prohibited. If the drawing of the lots is not essential, then there's more logic to say, since it's not essential, even though you did it, you can still play around with it. And indeed, Amar Lahem, Rabbi Akiva responded, Al titnu makim let tzadukim lirdois. He says, the tzadukim, which were on the height, this is right before they became the Christians. This is at the end of their revolt. Don't give them a basis to be overbearing over us, because they would say, you see, you, the Chachamim, the Perushim, you do whatever you like doing. You find a way to apply Yiddishkeit in the way that you seem fit. We also have that right to do so. In other words, says the Gemara Tama, the only reason why Rabbi Akiva rejected this concept of flipping the hands is the Altit Numarkim Letzudukim Lirdois. But Halaf Hachim Adrinolai. Then we would be allowed to switch them around. Now, says the Gemara of Amrat, I don't understand. Rabbi Yechanan, if you're going to go, according to all of the opinions, that Hagrilla, that the drawing of the lots is Ma'akev, the Kivan, the Kova'ate, so if it's Ma'akev, that means it must happen. If it must happen once the Kova'ate Smoil, once the Lashem came up in the left hand, so Hecha Madrin Alei, that it shouldn't only be an issue of the Tzedukim are going to use this as a point. You guys figured out, you made it Edu, right? You made it Mechiras Chometz, all the tainas that they have until today. It's worse than that. So Amar Rava says that they didn't ask Rabbi Akiva whether they are allowed to simply take the lottery, the lot of the left, and put it in the right hand. That's not what they asked. That you can't do that. If you hold Hagrilla Ma'akfa, you cannot do that. That what happens if Allah Hagoidel Bismol. Indeed, if the Goidel came up in the left hand, and Chevra, that's essential. And that determined that the goat to the left is Lashem. Question is, can you take the lot of the left and the goat on the left and move it to the right. Obviously, people that are clear are seeing that you're moving everything around. But most people that are much farther away, they won't see that. And again, this is just a psychological nichum to the oilam. Yeah, the Kohen Gadol, I saw the one to the right was slaughtered Lashem. But the one that was on the side of the lot, that's a shidduch. That cannot be exchanged because taka Hagrilla is ma'akvon. Allah got a smile. Mao sheyachsru loy ulisiiroi liyamin. And on that Amalahem, listen, theoretically, yeah. But he didn't want to give ammunition, so to say, to the Tzedukim, al titnu makam Tzedukim lirdois, because that's their taina. That on one hand, Torah Sheval Peh is taka emes, but on the other hand, the Chachamim always figured out how to find the legal loopholes whenever they find it appropriate. So then why don't they find other legal loopholes for other areas in Yiddishkeit that the Tzedukim found important? That was their time. Weiter. Toshima, quoting a Brais over here. I just want to quote the words in the Torah upon which this Braisa is based. Pasuk writes, "V'hikriv aharon es hasoir asher olav hagoydel lashem v'oso chatos." That's the step that we're up to. Says the Braisa that the word Allah is extra. The Torah could have says that Aaron would bring the soir asher olav hagoydel. Perfect. Asher olav hagoydel lashem, and that's taka brought as a chatos. The other one is going to be pushed off the cliff, and this one is made into a chatos. So why does God write the word Allah? So says the Braisa, ilu nemar es hasoir asher olav, without the word Allah. Hayisi oimer, I would have thought that yanichenu olav, that the lot has to be placed on the back of the animal. But since the Torah added the word Allah, now Allah literally means lift it up, right? Drawing. Allah means that all you need is Allah. Kivan sha'Allah, once you draw the lots, shuv ein sarech, there is no need to place it. Now, guys, I know that this can fit in Rabbi Yana and Rabbi Yechanan, but hold on a second. Up until now, everyone holds that lemitzvah, lechatchila, you draw the lots. We kept on going through that step. You draw the lots. Let's go with our Mishnah. Both hands of the Kohen Gadol. And then he places the lot of his right on the soil to the right, the lot of his left on the soil of the left. If he didn't do it, the question is whether it's ma'akev or not. This Braisa seems to be saying that you don't have to do it. Shuv ain't sarech. You don't have to place it. So asks the Gemara, 1 second. Lemait, what are we talking about? If the Braisa is not even speaking about essentiality, we're just speaking about, should you lechatchila do it? Is there a mitzvah to do it? If that's the meaning of the Braisa, so what is the Braisa saying? That mechlal hanocha mitzvah namiloi? That can be. No one holds that lechatchila, when you draw the lots, the final step is actually placing the lot on the animal. Elamat must mean that what is this Braisa referring to? La'akev. So the question is whether it's essential or not. And the Braisa learns from the extra word Allah that the hanacha is not essential. But what's the implication? That Allah is essential. So now we're back to the kasha. Elab shmamino hagrilla ma'akva. Now 1 second. Atkan, right? All the kashas we had on Rabbi Yanai. Chevra, this is clearly a question on Rabbi Yechanan. This is diametrically the opposite of Rabbi Yechanan. Shmamino hagrilla ma'akva. It's only hanacha noy ma'akva. What did Rabbi Yechanan say? Rabbi Yechanan said neither are ma'akva. So Amar Rava, this is how Rabbi Yechanan will learn the Braisa. Hachik Amar ilu nemar asher olav. In other words, if God would have omitted the word Allah, which appears to be extra, indeed, hayisi oimer yanichenu atshash shchita. How do you interpret in English the word lahaniach? Think about it for a second. Guys, lahaniach could be interpreted in 2 ways. Lahaniach can mean to place. And by the way, that's what we're learning. You got to place it. And everyone holds it's a mitzvah to place. But you know what? Lahaniach can mean to leave it there. To leave it there. Everyone holds that the last step of the lottery is placing each lot on the back of the animal on that side. But the Braisa is not focusing on that step of just placing it. Here is another question. Do you have to leave it? Now, until when? You might think it has to be left there until you shecht it. That is what the Braisa is discussing. And if Hashem would not have written the words Allah, it says Olav. Olav means that until you shech it, and then the other one until you dispatch it, you would have thought you have to leave it on. So that's why Asher Allah, Kiven Sha'Allah, Shuv Ein Yitzorach, you don't have to leave it. But Lahaniach, everyone holds that the mitzvah is Lahaniach. The Braisa is not speaking about Liyikuva. So the whole premise of the Kasha Nabi Yechina now was removed. Nachamol Tashema. It says in a Braisa, continuing with the same pasuk, right? Ve'osou chatos. Now it says Asher Allah hagoydol Hashem ve'osou chatos. Zok the Braisa hagoydol oiseu chatos. But ve'ein Hashem oiseu chatos. Only verbal declaration without the lottery cannot determine which he-goat is lachatos and therefore which he-goat is la'azazel. And guys, this is a chiddush that we have only on Yom Kippur. Because, how does it work by karbonis? How do you consecrate an animal? By making a verbal declaration, by making a verbal designation. And let's go even more. The Braisa is going to contrast the avoid of Yom Kippur with another type of carbon in which you have two animals. Really, it's two birds. One of them is lachatos, one of them is la'olam. That's all of the dinei kinim that we have in Masechtas Kinim. Let's give just as an example that a Yoledes, if she's poor, she brings two birds at the end on the 41st day or on the 81st day, a zav gedoyla, a zava, v'chulei, where the carbon is two birds. Now, when you have to determine which bird is lachatas, which bird is la'oila, and Chevra, just as a quick hagdama to the next year we're going to learn, and this is going to be a great review of dinim and kachim, the whole challenge of Masechtas Kinim happens if the birds were already designated one la'oila, one lachatas. Remember that? So you have nests or pairs of bird, kinim, and then a bird of one group flew into your group of birds. And I don't know whether the chatas flew out, whether the oila flew out. That complicates life. Practically, we strongly tell people, don't pre-designate the birds determining which one is chatas, which one is oila. And we're going to continue to learn about that next year. But when you make that determination, so you are an owner, you have to bring two birds, one for an oila, one for a chatas. How do you determine it? You only determine it by a verbal declaration. There's never a lottery. Sheyachol, says the Braisa, v'haloi dinu. I would have logically compared the two he-goats to another area in Kachim, which is Uma b'makom sheloi kidei shagoyro. The other areas where you have a pair of birds. There is no lottery to determine. So how do you determine Kidesh Hashem? This is not Shem Hashem. This is a verbal, that's the way it's done. So you would think that Makayim Shekidesh HaGoydel, that if God gives another option, we might have understood it as another option. No, there are more ways to determine. It's easier to determine. So Einoi Din, that only a verbal declaration, which one is Lashem and which one is La'azazel, that it should work. She'ekadesh Hashem. That's all the Braisa. So therefore, Talmud Loimer, the pasuk writes, the pasuk that we quoted, that Asher Allah of Hagoydel Hashem v'osou chatos. That v'osou chatos meaning only the Goydel oiseh chatos. He's not saying that you shouldn't make a verbal declaration. He's saying that the verbal declaration is effective because you made the Goydel v'ein Hashem oiseh chatos. Now, Daf Mem Aleph says the Gemara. What's the kasha? I'll tell you what the kasha is. Let's not forget that Nechemia. We learned Rab Shimon that holds that making a goydel is not essential. We learned generally, Rabbi Yehuda says that the seder, let's at least speak about the seder of any step that's done, even the big day lovin, but if it's not done bachutz, if it's not done b'fnim, if it's done bachutz, the seder is not ma'akiv. However, the problem here is, now we're speaking about the goydel. The goydel is done, as we mentioned, it's done in the courtyard. Stam Sifra, Daf Mem Aleph on the top, follows Rabbi Yehuda. Yet it clearly says v'kotani hagoydel oiseh chatos, but ve'ein Hashem oiseh chatos. You cannot skip this step. So what do we see over here? Alma, the Hagrilla is makman. Now guys, we're not even speaking about going out of sequence. Forget about that detail. We clearly see that the Hagrilla is ma'akav. What's my problem? My problem is, to Yufta, let's go, the man the Amar, Hagrilla loy ma'akva. Now, let's just speak out at the end. So this kasha is going to be according to the first version. According to the first version, this is a tiyufta both on Rabbi Yechanan and on Rabbi Yanai. Because according to the first version, the Gemara said that they are only arguing clearly. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara began the first version. Since Rabbi Yehuda holds the Seder of Manasseh, not Bifnim, is not Ma'akev, everyone will hold that Hagrilla is not Ma'akev. Rabbi Yehuda. So according to this Braisa, this refutes both Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Yanai according to the first version. This is a tiyufta according to the second version, according to Rabbi Yechanan. Let's not forget, now it's good. Rabbi Yanai holds that even though Rabbi Yehuda generally holds that if you're not inside the Holy of Holies, only there did God say the word chukah, right? That there's no din of ikuv, but at least Rabbi Yanai says, but but Hagrilla, forget about the Seder, making a Hagrilla, Asher Allah, Shana Bar Kasav La'akiv. That was only Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yechanan was more lenient. So it's amazing. We began the whole shiur today challenging Rabbi Yanai. At the end, we substantiate Rabbi Yanai. We tiyuftad Rabbi Yechanan according to the second version. Now, we also refuted the first version that says that even Rabbi Yanai says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, Hagrilla loy ma'akva, this is refuted clearly from this sifra based on the premise that Stam sifra is Rabbi Yehuda. We'll stop over here because now we completely concluded the whole sugya of drawing being ma'akiv, hanacha being ma'akiv, v'chulei. Now that we mentioned, we just pointed out that in kachim, where do we have that a person has to bring two animals and then he has to determine which one is going for what function? We have this on Yom Kippur. You bring two he-goats, and that determination, as we are learning now, has to be done through a lottery. The lottery has to happen. At least the drawing of the lots. We also have it by kinnim. So we're going to start the next year, Chevra, learning the rules. There is no lottery when you have the pair of birds. The question is, when could the owner determine, when could the kohen determine which bird is a chatas, which bird is an oila? And one of the klalim, Chevra, that we learned a lot, and it's good to chazer it, will be the din of Rab Chizda, that there is only 2 points where you have the power to determine which bird is oila, which bird is chatas. I should say chatas first because chatas is always brought first. Chatas and oila, either when you buy it and consecrate it, or when the kohen brings it. You know, it's if when you bought the birds, if you don't right away say, this bird is going to be a chatas and that one is an oila, it remains what Chazal call a kain sesuma, which is good. You have 2 birds. They are both designated for the bird karbanis. That is holy. Yechayiv me'ilah, it's kachim, but it's undifferentiated. And it's actually better that way, like we mentioned, because if one bird escapes this nest, then you have to replace it. At least you know, right? It's a lot easier to replace it. You're always beginning with 2 undifferentiated birds, and especially if the bird that escapes my nest flies into your nest, if it was already determined, then it creates a gavaldike confusion, which is taka geshmak for learning Torah and Masechta Skinim. But poyal mamish, it makes life very difficult. And we actually advocate for people to have a kain sesuma. Chevra, a lot more to be continued.
Rabbi, is this bird typically like a domestic chicken or specific type of bird that's always?
Very good, very good. So Baruch, so the Torah only allows us 2 types of birds. One is called a toir. A toir is called a turtle dove, but it has to be a turtle dove after it matured. And the other one, the other option is called b'nei yoina. B'nei yoina in English means a young pigeon, but it's taka, a young pigeon. And normally you have to bring pairs of the same type. So yeah, either you bring shtei toirim or shnei b'nei yoina. Never a chicken.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we're learning real kachim over here. To be continued.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good job.
How was the hookup? All good?